Leading off our discussion tonight, our Democratic Congressman Krishnamoorthi of Illinois. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee and the House Intelligence Committees. He was present for today's deposition with Michael McKinley. Also joining us, Evelyn Farkas, a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense in the Obama administration. She is an MSNBC national security analyst. And Ben Rhodes is with us. He's a former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Obama, and he is an MSNBC political analyst. Congressman Krishnamoorthi, with Mr. McKinley today, we did discover that his resignation last week, which appeared as though it might be a resignation in protest, indeed was a resignation in protest.
I think that's fair to say. Based on his opening statement, you can tell that. I can't get into the specific testimony, but what I can say is that here's a man who served 37 years in the State Department, a career political servant, public servant who was apolitical, and nothing that he said was inconsistent with the claims in the whistleblower complaint. And then the second point I just want to make is that he's the latest in a string of career public servants from the government who've come forward to testify before our inquiry, despite and in defiance of the Trump administration's order asking them not to do so. And so that's important.
Let me go to a point that Rachel just raised at the beginning of the hour, which is Mitch McConnell telling the Republican senators today he expects to be going to an impeachment trial around Thanksgiving and run it 6 days a week in the Senate and get it completed by Christmas. Knowing how your investigation is going, does that make sense to you? Is that what is likely to occur?
I really don't know, Lawrence. I think that at this point, we're right in the throes of the investigation. We are literally having a witness a day, every day of the week at this point. And so we're just kind of interviewing and deposing witnesses, reviewing documents and gathering facts. I think we want to do this expeditiously because there might be an ongoing crime in the Oval Office right now or in the Trump administration if the allegations of the whistleblower complaint are to be believed, namely that there's a scheme right now to coerce the Ukrainian government to interfere in our 2020 elections.
And Evelyn Farkas, the testimony as it keeps coming out indicates that the president was repeatedly telling people to check with Giuliani as they were working toward dealings with Ukraine. Everything had to be checked with Giuliani.
Right. And we heard yesterday, at least through the media reports coming from members like Representative Krishnamoorthi, that basically George Kent had also said that he was told to essentially, even though Ukraine was one of the countries he was responsible for, he should not deal with Ukraine, essentially turn it over to Sondland and Giuliani. And then, of course, we've heard that Fiona Hill testified saying that John Bolton, also recognized that there was something going on here. I mean, Giuliani obviously was not a government official. This was a renegade operation. And it's highly disturbing, the suggestion that this is still ongoing.
And Ben, there's so much accumulating evidence this week as some word leaks out about these depositions. We're going to have the Ambassador Sondland deposition this week also. But what we've heard so far indicates that Gordon Sondland was in the middle of what was called the Three Amigos, that trying to put this deal together in which Ukraine would give the president what he wanted, an investigation of Joe Biden, and only after that could Ukraine expect any kind of decent relations with Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, what we have, Lawrence, is at the core of this, we've all read the transcript of that phone call with Trump, where he himself is the leader of this criminal conspiracy to coerce a foreign government to interfere in our election. What's been interesting, though, is every single piece of information not only corroborates that, it just broadens the extent to which this conspiracy brought in other people. So you take Gordon Sondland. What on earth was he doing in Ukraine policy anyway? Ukraine is not in the European Union. What he is a political person who purchased his ambassadorship with a $1 million contribution to Donald Trump. And apparently was the only person who was willing to go along with this scheme. What we've seen also is a lot of these career people, like Ambassador McKinley who testified today, like a career academic and analyst like Fiona Hill who testified, they don't want to go down with this ship. And so we're seeing a bit of a sorting here where the career foreign service officers or the people who are looking forward to a lifetime of potentially future public service don't want to go along and covering for this. And so all the information that's coming out is painting a more damning picture of a criminal conspiracy led by Donald Trump in the White House. And ultimately, you go back to that photograph that you led the show with, Lawrence, all those people on Trump's side look pretty uncomfortable to be there. They have their eyes closed, they're looking at the table because they're going down with this ship.
When you see Bill Taylor's text to Gordon Sondland saying, I think it's crazy that they're holding up the aid to Ukraine for political favor. Does that read to you like the professionals like Bill Taylor are actually making sure this stuff is in writing?
Oh, absolutely. I worked with both Bill Taylor and Ambassador McKinley. I had no idea what their politics are. They're professionals. Mm-hmm. And what they know, having been in government for decades, is this never happens. People need to understand this. Trump likes to say everybody's corrupt. No, this does not happen where you have the President of the United States corrupting American foreign policy to get foreign countries to do what he wants to interfere in our election. And so a guy like Bill Taylor looks at that and says, I better get this down in writing, that I think this is a crazy idea in his words, right? And I think one after another, what you're seeing is people who've already been uncomfortable with the Trump foreign policy and the corruption of our foreign policy see this for what it is, which is a criminal corruption of American foreign policy on behalf of his reelection, and they want no part of it. And thankfully for them, they're not going along with the White House stonewalling of this inquiry. And so even though the White House is stonewalling the inquiry, these public servants seem to revel in the opportunity to come forward and share what they know. And that's why I do think it's worth following this impeachment inquiry, getting as much information as we can, seeing how long it goes, because we need to know the extent of this corruption.
Can I just jump in on that
go ahead,
for a second?
Ahead, Congressman.
I was just going to say something adding to that. One thing that folks in the audience should know is that these people are putting their careers on the line. In this particular case, McKinley actually resigned on Friday and then came in today to testify. But in other cases, they are still members of the State Department. So they are coming in, putting their necks on the line, putting their careers on the line, doing the commendable and patriotic thing and coming forward and cooperating. And then the only other thing I would just say is that if anybody's watching tonight, you have evidence of wrongdoing, please come forward. It's very important. And we are doing everything we can to protect the whistleblower's identity. We don't want to burn his or her identity. And we will do everything in our power to protect these people coming forward.
Congressman, Mitt Romney, I just want to get to this point about Mitt Romney, Senator Romney, in effect supporting your investigation today by saying it is essential that people respond to subpoenas that come from Congress. And Congressman, that seems like something a senator would not have to say. But I'm wondering if you know how the Romney statement about responding to subpoenas landed with your Republican colleagues in the House.
Well, I think that they're not saying anything publicly that's in support of what Mitt Romney is saying. But privately, I think that a lot of them agree that you just don't blow off subpoenas. And certainly when these people are coming in, some of these State Department officials, sometimes without even a subpoena, just coming in voluntarily, and they come and testify, and they sound credible, and they sound consistent and compelling. You see the Republicans on the other side engaging with these people. They are not attacking these witnesses. They know that these people are career public servants. They are apolitical, and if anything, they have an incentive to be quiet, not to come forward and talk. And so it's been interesting watching the decorum in these private settings. I think that it's actually, I got to believe that these folks on the other side of the aisle are seeing the same thing I'm seeing. They may not publicly talk about it the way I am, but I'm hoping that it starts to hit home for some of them.
Evelyn, please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that, Lawrence. I just wanted to add one thing to what the congressman was saying to highlight how courageous these people are, because these are, I was in government for 20 years, part of it as kind of a non-political, most of it as a non-political type person. These people don't make a lot of money. Every time they have to go and testify, and they decide to testify, they have to bring lawyers. The Foreign Service Association, actually, for the first time in living memory, I think, is raising money, is doing a fundraiser for these people so that they have the right representation.
We're going to have to leave it there for this break.